It all began with a broken sandal. Not just any sandal, King Hermios' sandal, mind you, and one tragically lost in the dust outside Bactrian's eastern wall during a frantic cavalry retreat. Of course, nobody remembers the sandal. They remember the retreat when the sunburnt philosophers of Bactria packed their scrolls, olive oil and hubris and ran screaming into the welcoming arms of India. But what really happened? Why did the proud, toga-wrapped, coin-stamping Greeks of the East find themselves selling grapes and debating stoicism in a Patna marketplace? And how did it all end in a showdown with elephants and a very annoyed Kushan warlord? Dear viewer, prepare thyself. This is not just a tale of war and migration. This is the tale of sunburn, cross-cultural misunderstandings, spicy food-induced epiphanies, and the world's most awkward welcome party. Once upon a time, or more precisely, sometime around the 2nd century BCE, the Greek kingdoms born from Alexander the Great's leftovers had carved out a peculiar empire in the deserts of Central Asia. Imagine it. Marble columns standing awkwardly beside Zoroastrian fire temples. Greek boys named Antimachos playing hopscotch in the shadows of Buddhist stupas. The Bactrian Greeks were an exotic cocktail, part Homer, part Mahabharata, with a dash of paranoia and sandalwood. At first, they did quite well. They minted coins with Apollo on one side and weird local gods with 12 arms on the other, just to be safe. They married local women, grew fond of curry, and occasionally mistook Sanskrit for an extremely difficult form of Attic Greek. But Bactria was never a peaceful place. Every month seemed to bring a new invader, a new rebellion, or worse, philosophers from Athens visiting to critique their architecture. Then came the Kushans. Led by Kujula Kadphises, a man with a name that sounded like a sneeze and a sword longer than most kitchen tables, the Kushans stormed in from the north like a dust storm with manners. They weren't particularly interested in art critiques or olive oil. They had horses, arrows, ambition, and absolutely no appreciation for Plato. In short, a Greek's worst nightmare. King Hermios, the last of the big Bactrian shots, thought he could reason with them. After all, hadn't diplomacy and smug superiority always worked before? He invited the Kushans to dinner. He wore his finest purple robe. He even offered them olives. They burned his palace. What followed was less of a battle and more of a slapstick escape montage. Greek soldiers tripped over peacock statues. Philosophers screamed about ethics while getting hit with bricks. A statue of Athena was last seen floating down the river, being chased by ducks. The Greeks ran southward, eastward, anywhere that didn't have angry Kushans. Their armor clinked through the passes of the Hindu Kush like badly tuned wind chimes. And then India. India, a land of gold, gods, and gastronomical surprises. The retreating Greeks, sunburnt, sandalless, and slightly traumatized, stumbled into the Indo-Gangetic plains like confused tourists. They had expected more fighting. They got invitations to feasts, curious stares, and a lot of questions about their weird hats. Some found refuge in Gandhara, where the locals already spoke a bit of Greek, and Buddha was often sculpted like Apollo with abs. Others ended up in Mathura, debating metaphysics with saffron-robed monks who found the Greek obsession with logic both adorable and inefficient. And then, of course, came the marriages. By the time the Kushans caught up, the Greeks had already married into half of northern India. Some had become tax collectors. One guy, allegedly, opened a wine shop beside a Vishnu temple and called it Dionysus' Sons. Nobody stopped him. Business was booming. The Kushans, seeing all this, were understandably baffled. They had expected a dramatic last stand, perhaps a heroic duel with a bearded general yelling about Sparta. What they got was a wedding invitation from a man named Demetrios, who now went by Deepak. So the Kushans adapted. They absorbed what was left. A few Greek generals were given jobs, advisor on foreign swag, or ambassador of columns. The rest disappeared into the fog of history, replaced by hybrid cultures, bilingual coins, and statues of Buddha wearing a Greek toga and smiling like he knew something we didn't. The retreat of the Bactrian Greeks wasn't really a defeat. It was a transformation, a cultural handoff, a reluctant evolution caused not by conquest, but by spice, marriage, and the gentle power of curiosity. What began as a political migration became one of the most colorful collisions in ancient history. It gave us Greco-Buddhist art, Indo-Greek kings with dramatic names, and one bizarre recipe for falafel masala. And let's be honest, if you were a sunburnt Greek general running from Kushan horsemen, and someone handed you a mango lassi and a philosophical chat beneath a banyan tree, wouldn't you stay? So the next time you look at an ancient coin, or visit a temple in Gandhara, or hear someone mention Greco-Buddhist fusion, remember the story of Hermios and his lost sandal. History isn't always about war. Sometimes it's about what happens after the war. When the soldiers become shopkeepers, the philosophers learn Sanskrit, and the conquerors end up confused. And if you enjoyed this tale of ancient chaos, curry, and cultural crossover, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More wild historical mashups are on the way. Maybe next time we'll talk about the Roman ambassador who tried to trade wine for tigers, or the Persian who thought democracy was a type of fruit. Until then, keep your sandals tied tight and your borders open. You never know when Zeus might meet Shiva again.